In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
Hey guys, King Jeff here. Welcome to my first ever professionally produced quote-unquote YouTube video. I don't plan on making many videos like this, but I felt an incessant urge to make this one in particular. I made this video in collaboration with Alexander Amethyst, and I'm joined today by none other than Raven SPCR. Even if you don't care much for Warhammer, you may be interested in sticking around to see what this is all about. Now, Raven is a Marvel Rivals content creator, as I'm sure many of you are aware. What some of you might not know is that Raven used to make Warhammer content himself. Raven, could you do me a favor and introduce yourself? What's your experience with Warhammer and what level of knowledge do you have on the topic?
Hey folks, I'm Raven, and I am a Marvel Rivals content creator. I also did very much have my Warhammer phase, as a lot of the TISM enjoyers will know. My experience with Warhammer very much started with Total War, the game, as a lot of people did. I got into Old World, and then from there I got into 40k, and I've been a Tyranids Bugs boy ever since. I know there's certain Chaos entities that are going to come up later in this video, and as far as my interest in those go, they can't feed the hive mind, so they don't feed my interest as much. But you know, I feel like I have a pretty intermediate knowledge of Warhammer in general, and it's definitely one of my interests.
Thank you, Raven. We'll start off with a brief explanation on the part of Warhammer we'll be focusing on today. Let's get right into it. Warhammer 40k is a fictional universe created by Brian Ansell, Richard Hollowell, and Rick Priestley at Games Workshop in 1983. It started off as a humble tabletop role-playing game where people would create and paint miniature models that they would then battle with. Over the years, Warhammer has evolved and blossomed into a massive franchise full of expansive lore, from things that are cosmic in scale, such as chaos gods, to smaller details like what humans eat or even the state of imperial politics. Today we'll be discussing one of those chaos gods, but not just any ordinary chaos god. We'll be discussing the chaos god that arguably caused the Horus Heresy to play out the way it did. Some even claim that this chaos god is the only true god. Today we'll be discussing none other than Tzeentch, the chaos god of change. He is also known as the Changer of Ways, the Great Conspirator, and the Architect of Fate, to name a few of his 1,000 epithets. Tzeentch, as established, is the chaos god of change. For those who aren't quite sure what that means, this hypothetical should sum up Tzeentch's whole gimmick. Imagine you're some lowly imperial citizen. Your life sucks, in some way similar to your peers. Now imagine it's much worse for you. Specifically, perhaps you work in one of the corpse starch factories. You find yourself leading a life with no purpose, and you're losing faith in the God Emperor. You're desperate for change, and you're willing to do just about anything to make your life better. Tzeentch will reach out and offer you the change you crave. He'll show you what he can do to change your life, and it'll be everything your heart desires. Love and admiration for you among your peers, a successful career, or maybe even a position as a senior military official. Tzeentch will show you all your wishes coming true and your dreams being realized, and will tell you that your perfect world can be all yours to claim if you just follow him. But there's a catch. Once you accept that deal and become one of his followers, he twists your body, your mind, and your soul. His promises were all half-truths at best and outright lies at worst. He may make you a senior military official, sure, but not for the Imperium like you hoped. No, he'll make you a leader among his cannon fodder ranks, although this assumes that you're even remotely valuable to him as a soul. Oftentimes, he won't even present himself to you. He's likely to simply manipulate you without you even knowing. Your life will suddenly be better, but you don't even realize your actions are playing right into one of his schemes. Your life is steadily improving, but your soul has already been damned to serve Tzeentch. The worst part? You have no idea it's happening. Once you do realize what's happening, it'll already be too late. His scheme is complete, and your soul is getting sent straight to the warp where it belongs. One of the worst things that can happen to someone in Warhammer is falling to chaos, and it doesn't matter which chaos god, they all lie to you. Tzeentch, however, his lies are carefully constructed and difficult to conquer. You'll see his lies for what they are, you will have every reason to not trust it, and you still can't help yourself. In spite of seeing through his lies, you will also see everything your heart desires. The realm of Tzeentch is drastically different from every other chaos realm. Being the god of change entails many physical changes, not only to himself, but also to his surroundings and everything under his control. Mortal minds and souls cannot comprehend or withstand being inside the realm of Tzeentch. It's a twisted, grotesque maze of ever-shifting grounds and skies. Mortals that find themselves within this realm tend to die remarkably quick from just being overwhelmed by the madness. Tzeentch has full control over this realm and can do anything he pleases.
Yes, that's the perfect description of Tzeentch King. He's not just a liar, he's a manipulator and a gaslighter, all of the things your ex might have been. The whole point is that you will see the trap he's setting in front of you, but it's so perfectly tailored, you can't help but resist walking into it. Or maybe he wanted you to see that trap because the trap is somewhere else. He is an enigma wrapped in a box of lies and mystery that you'll never quite crack. He promises change for something better that never quite materializes. It's why he's so dangerous compared to somebody like Khorne, who might just try to bonk you on the head or challenge you to a battle to the death. Tzeentch won't do that. He'll tell you he's going to fight you and then stab you in the back.
A great example to give an idea of what this realm could look like in its raw form are the purple and blue locations you find yourself in during many campaign and operation missions inside the game Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. The Chaos forces that you fight in this game are members of the Thousand Suns Traitor Space Marine Legion and spawns of Tzeentch. Many of his spawn in the expanded lore, though many don't appear in Space Marine 2, are creatures with excess numbers of arms or legs or tentacles. Some even have extra heads, and some resemble stingrays that fly through the air. However, there's one particular example I'd like to mention. There exists a chapter of Space Marines called the Soul Drinkers. I'm not going to dive into their expanded lore today, though it is interesting, so maybe another time. They had a chapter master transform into a giant spider by the name of Sarpedon. Here's a picture of him now. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Where's the twist? Why am I still here? What's so crazy about any of this? For context, a few days ago we had a movie night in the Discord server and we were watching the 2009 kids movie Coraline. While watching the movie, as a dedicated Warhammer fan, I couldn't help but notice the consistent nods to Warhammer and it bugged me. So how does Warhammer tie into Coraline? Am I reading too much into this movie or am I crazy? You can let me know in the comments what you think, because I'm not entirely sure. The movie opens with a brown-haired doll in a pink dress being undone from the hair braids to the stuffing to having its rag skin turned inside out, filled with sand, and turned into a Coraline doll, presumably by a character we'll be introduced to later called the Other Mother. It is then sent out into what looks like outer space and presumably warps that Coraline doll into the main universe. This is similar to how Chaos Gods in Warhammer are oftentimes depicted sending their armies from the warp into the material realm. When we cut to the main universe, we find Mr. Babinski on top of Coraline's new home, presumably doing warm-ups after the Other Mother creates the Coraline doll and sends it to the main universe. He's then interrupted by the Joneses family car honking their horn, and he proceeds to express his annoyance and anger at the car before wrapping up his presumed warm-up routine and hopping off the roof. There's a couple semi-important details to mention. Mr. Babinski, as shown here, is a tall man with blue skin and body proportions that don't quite add up. The most obvious explanation for this is the Chernobyl liquidator medal that he has on his chest constantly throughout the movie. However, radiation poisoning doesn't turn your skin blue and make you instantly strong while having zero muscle density in your arms and legs. That doesn't make sense at all. His body proportions along with his acrobatic abilities defy the laws of physics so blatantly that I couldn't help but notice how closely his design resembles something that Tzeentch would turn a man into. This is also where we notice the main universe being very gray in color, kind of like many Imperial worlds. The lower levels are oftentimes just various shades of gray and black, maybe sometimes you'll get a little bit of white. Warhammer is both figuratively and literally grimdark, as it helped define the genre in the first place. Oftentimes the only colors you'll see in the Warhammer setting are various shades of gray, though occasionally you'll see gold in the upper levels of hive cities or at the Imperial Palace on Earth. What's your take on how I just explained what's going on in the movie up to this point, and how I'm connecting the dots between Mr. Babinski and something Tzeentch would do, and how the environment in the movie can relate to Warhammer?
I mean, you are once again totally right. Earth, or Terra, is often a miserable place in the Warhammer universe. It all is. Whether it's hive cities laden with endless amounts of poverty and crime and war, you've hit the nail on the head, King. I mean, Earth or Terra in Warhammer and most of the Imperial's planets are the worst version of what you could imagine today, at times 10. To get yourself into that sort of headspace, think of the worst possible scenario and times it by 50, and that's probably a fraction of what the Warhammer universe is. But seeing it all laid out like this, the color theory, Mr. Babinski suffering almost Tzeentchian-style corruption, it's all compelling and definitely something I'd like to hear more of as you dive deeper into your theories.
Eventually in the movie, this weird cat appears, and for now, it's just a normal cat, but he has a strange gravitation towards Coraline. This will be very important later. We see YB appear for the first time as Coraline is searching for a secret well, and he's wearing this weird mask that's never really explained. It doesn't appear to serve much of a purpose for the story beyond just illustrating what a weird kid YB is, and the mask itself is not too far off from the face of a servitor or a tech priest, as shown here. It's different enough you can easily dismiss this if you so desire, but it's also close enough you can see the connection. After the brief introduction to YB, we find out that the secret well Coraline is looking for is surrounded by a circle of mushrooms that Coraline is in the center of, so she quickly moves out of the way. According to YB, it's a well that's so deep that if you fell to the bottom and looked up, you'd see a sky full of stars in the middle of the day. We don't really get an explanation on what he means by this, but if it's as deep as I'm thinking, he may be implying it could be either a metaphor for death, or the other possibility I can think of is that maybe this well could have also been how the Coraline doll presumably got into the main universe in the first place, as it did get sent into the stars.
I was just going to say there is something connected to Tzeentch called the Well of Eternity, and the idea is it's a well that's infinitely deep and filled with infinite amounts of magic within the 40k universe, and it's at the center of the warp itself.
Oftentimes, chaos forces tend to slip into the material realm through strange figurative doorways. Wybie is surprised that the Jones family was allowed to move into the Pink Palace by his grandmother, as she has historically refused to rent it out to people with kids. When asked to elaborate on this by Coraline, Wybie says he's not allowed to talk about it and immediately changes the subject by introducing himself by name. We transition to another scene and we get a glimpse of Coraline's home life. We witness that the outside of the home isn't the only thing that's gloomy and devoid of color, but the inside of the home as well, due to Coraline's parents being rather neglectful of the kid, which unfortunately leads to the kid not exactly being a herald of positivity or kindness herself.
Coraline, I don't have time for you right now, and you still have unpacking to do. Lots of unpacking. That sounds exciting.
This is all setting the groundwork for the bulk of my answer, so bear with me while we inch closer and closer. What are your thoughts so far, Raven?
King, you're building a really strong case. It's all about the foundation for corruption. Coraline is isolated, bored, and feels unseen. She's the perfect target. Her soul is practically screaming for otherworldly intervention.
Later, Melinda Jones gives the Coraline doll we saw in the intro to the real Coraline, and as it turns out, Wybie wrapped it in newspaper and left it for her on the front porch of the Pink Palace. He also apparently found it in his grandmother's trunk of her car. This doll can easily be described as a tool used by Tzeentch to grab someone's attention. The doll is later explained in the movie as a means of spying on the lives of the other mother's victims to help set up a trap by finding out everything they could ever want and promising just that, which ultimately results in the demise of any children that interact with it. It's weird enough to grab your attention, but not so weird you freak out and burn it. At one point in the movie, Coraline is seen practically begging for attention from her parents. They're both way too busy, so she resorts to being annoying and makes the door to her dad's office creak over and over and over again. In an attempt to get Coraline to go away so that he can work, Charlie Jones tells her to explore the house, count the doors, windows, and to also list everything that's blue for some reason. Weird that he would specify blue of all things. The house is mostly gray, so if he wants her to be busy for a while and leave him alone, you'd think he would tell her to just count everything that's gray, black, or white. Blue just seems like an oddly specific detail. Coraline sets the doll down on the table next to the box full of snow globes. It cuts to the same camera angle a few seconds later, and suddenly, it appears. We then see it lying on the floor on the other side of the living room, which very coincidentally happens to be where the door to the other universe is located. It's very clear this doll either has a mind of its own or is being controlled by someone or something. Coraline begs Melinda Jones to open the other door. She relents and goes to look for a key. She opens up the drawer full of rusty, dirty keys, and yet we get no hint of the black button key for the square door until it suddenly appears beneath some of the other keys. One thing to note is that it's far thicker than the other keys, and it's not like the drawer is filled to the brim with other keys concealing it, so its sudden appearance is weird. The other door is uncovered by Melinda Jones with a musical cue focusing on the Coraline doll, but once this other door is unlocked, all that is revealed is a brick wall. It's explained as it getting closed up when construction workers were dividing the house. Coraline goes to sleep for the night after dinner, and this is where we first find a tank, the main catalyst of the whole theory. It's easy to miss as it's shrouded in darkness, but the blue raggedy squid is consumed by light, so if you look there, you'll find the tank next to it. No sign of an insignia, however, due to the darkness. As Coraline is sleeping, the scene slowly fades to the other door opening itself, spawning paper mice in a spinning motion in the center of the brick wall concealing the other universe. When Coraline opens the other door, that is when it is officially confirmed that it's not just a brick wall behind it, but a purple-blue tunnel leading directly to the other universe, slowly revealing the other side of the tunnel, which shows the main door, as in the door that leads to the main universe. After noticing the change, Coraline smells something in the kitchen, which leads to us being introduced to Other Mother. The other kitchen being far more polished and stylized in warm, inviting colors, the other kitchen appears to have also been built at least semi-recently, as opposed to the main kitchen, which appears more decayed and utilitarian versus the very deliberately stylized other kitchen. This one's a pretty big indicator as well. The main colors you'll see associated with Tzeentch and his forces are various shades of blue, purple, and pink. So the fact that the doorway opens up to a blue and purple tunnel that leads to a world where everything appears to be drastically better is kind of hard to ignore for the video. This is probably a good time to mention this. In Warhammer, people use the warp, or the Chaos Realm, to travel vast distances in a very short amount of time. Traveling through the warp comes with dangers though. Staring into the warp will drive normal people to madness and either turn them or kill them. The way people achieve warp travel is by using navigators. Navigators are individuals who, as Psykers, possess the ability to, with the help of the Emperor's Golden Throne, navigate through the warp. When they do this, all windows on board the ship are sealed with blast doors, and while the Psyker navigates, the entire ship is under a mental assault by the demons within the warp. Regular people are not capable of surviving warp travel alone without the assistance of navigators. However, there also exist individuals who possess zero psychic ability, which makes them immune to the effects of warp travel and immune to chaos corruption.
I like where you're going with this, King. Just a fun tidbit for you. People in Warhammer that nullify the effects of the warp and psychers around them are known as blanks.
After finding the other kitchen and the other mother, we find out that she has button eyes, in spite of otherwise appearing entirely human, giving a vague hint of something rotten underneath all the whimsy. Coraline catches on to the inherently disturbing nature of a human with button eyes.
You're not my mother. My mother doesn't have buttons.
Though it's quickly forgotten as she fetches Other Father for dinner. We are introduced to Other Father playing the piano, where we see the room, instead of being filled with boxes full of junk, a basic lamp, and a stone cold floor, we see it clean, warm, and again stylized. The highest stacked thing in there being records and a violin. After pointing out that Charlie Jones can't play piano, Other Father states that the piano plays him instead, almost like a puppet. He and the piano then proceed to go into a roughly 30-second musical number about how great Coraline is. The other universe, seemingly to cater to Coraline specifically, is further highlighted in the dinner scene, and several points beyond the initial introduction to the other universe. This just further reinforces my theory. Tzeentch will do this exact same thing to corrupt people. He will show you what your life could be like if you just follow him. Coraline ends up going to sleep around this time, and the scene fades from the other bedroom to the main bedroom without an apparent explanation. This would imply that it was all a dream, if not for the poison oak rash from earlier being healed. This is also where we get a clearer look at the tank, which does appear to have some insignia on its rear. You can easily write off the symbol on the rear of the tank if you so desire. However, I think, combined with the fact that the tank doesn't resemble any real-life tanks, the symbol is worth considering. Tanks in World War I, like the Mark I, would have their tracks wrapping around the length of the tank, similar to the tank in Coraline's bedroom. But that's about where the sharp similarities end. The tank in her bedroom leans forward at such a sharp angle and sits so tall that it's impossible for it to be based on any real-life tanks from World War I, or World War II for that matter. Is there anything you want to add to that, Raven?
I definitely see what you're saying about the tank, and longtime Warhammer fans will definitely recognize the shape of the tank as being very close to an Astra Militarum tank called the Lehman Russ. It's very famous, very often used, and is almost like a cult classic mini and battle vehicle used within their armies. For those who don't know, the guardsmen within Warhammer are a very normal human army. They are the generic military of men and women like you and I. And the Lehman Russ is a staple of their military force. So it appearing in the movie is definitely something to take note of and be interested in.
Coraline explains to her family what exactly happened in the other universe, though they don't seem to believe her because frankly, it's just as ridiculous as it sounds. According to Mr. Babinski, the jumping mice tasked him to send a message to Coraline, do not go through the little door. Coraline points out that it's covered by bricks, and that's when Mr. B apologizes for the apparent mix-up and says that they pronounce her name wrong, but calling her Coraline instead of Caroline, which is the correct pronunciation. How the mice know her name is not known. This is also the perfect time to point out that except for the jumping mice that led Coraline to the other door in the first place, we have yet to see these so-called jumping mice in the main universe. After some shenanigans with the banana slugs, YB mentions he's never been allowed inside the Pink Palace, and he actually does elaborate this time. Apparently his grandmother would kill him if he tried, or she believes it's dangerous. She had a twin sister who disappeared when they were kids, which led the grandmother to believe she was stolen.
I've never been inside the Pink Palace.
You're kidding.
Grandma kill me. Thinks it's dangerous or something.
Dangerous?
We also see the cat look at the Coraline doll and meow in almost an angry tone, pointing to the cat perhaps knowing more than we're led to believe. On Coraline's second trip to the other universe, we end up getting a full view of the other garden, which was designed to be in Coraline's likeness, courtesy of Other Father. Yet another nudge at Tzeentch and his whole gimmick. We are officially introduced to Other Wybie, who appears to be mute. Other Mother explained this as,
I thought you'd like him more if he spoke a little less, so I fixed him.
the same type of mice that Coraline used to bait a few of them to showing her the other door appear in Other Babinski's house in a jumping mouse circus act. Shortly afterward, we get a look at Other Babinski, who also shares similarly unrealistic proportions to the main universe Babinski, but instead of a large gut, he has a large torso and a slim waist, along with a polished blue mustache. We're seeing an awful lot of changes being made specifically to suit Coraline's desires for an ideal world. Later, we see the tank again, this time in a different location yet again, despite never being touched. Keep in mind, we see Coraline on screen for 99% 99% of the movie, and we have not once seen her play with the tank because the only time she's not on screen is when the camera shows something from her POV or when we're nowhere near her bedroom. Sure enough, we find out that the other universe is explicitly real, though I think the audience already kind of figured that out by this point. We also found out that the cat was watching Coraline enter the other universe. If you look very closely, you can actually see the same cat, who I shall now refer to as Spawn, on top of the roof before he meows at Coraline. This is also where we find out that in the other universe, not only can Spawn talk, but he's been popping in and out of this other universe for quite a while.
I've been coming here for a while.
Other Mother hates cats and she's tried to unsuccessfully keep him out of the other universe. He describes this as apparently some kind of game. Shortly afterwards, Spawn reveals that Other Wybie has told him that this other universe is not exactly the Elysian field that Coraline has been led to believe it is, though it's implied it might be telepathic in some ways, as Other Wybie can't literally speak as established earlier in the story. Spawn explains this as cats simply having superior senses to that of humans, but before we really get an explanation, he hears something in the distance and runs into the other pink palace. This is where we start to realize just how important Wybie is to the story. He's mute and can't communicate beyond hand and arm signals and facial expressions. This is also where we start to see just how free of Other Mother's control Wybie is, as everyone else seems to be unable to speak or act of their own free will, but Wybie seems to be able to wander and do what he pleases regardless of what the Other Mother is doing. We once again see Other Mother and Father ready to greet Coraline, who proceeds to tell them about how the show went. Other Wybie appears rather distraught when he sees the other parents, and Other Mother motions him to smile before closing the door on him. Other Mother then proceeds to offer Coraline to stay forever for a small favor, to sew buttons where Coraline's eyes were. The trap is officially sprung. Coraline understandably panics and rejects the offer and has to think of something quickly, so she pretends to be tired and sleepy. The other parents go along with this, for now. Coraline falls asleep in an attempt to go back to the main universe, and she thinks she's made it until it's revealed that she's still in the other universe. Uh-oh. We hear Other Father playing on his piano, or rather, just banging on the keys. When Coraline asks him where Other Mother is, he appears rather disheveled, and when he says her strength is our strength, the piano holds his mouth shut with one hand and starts wagging his other finger at him. This is a callback to when the Other Father said the piano played him.
This piano plays me.
Coraline tells him she's going to find Other Wybie. He responds by telling Coraline that Other Mother caught him with a long face, and that she didn't like it, stretching out his own mouth more than a human probably could before the piano grabs him by the face and does God knows what to him. So it seems these souls, whether human or demonic, are trapped and forced to obey Other Mother's every desire whenever she's nearby. But if she's not nearby, her realm will do the controlling for her, demonstrating immense control over her realm. Another similarity to Tzeentch: if you cut off Tzeentch's connection to his enslaved souls, they rapidly descend into madness, realizing what they've become and try to do whatever they can to help. This idea applies to most of the Chaos Gods in Warhammer.
So this is the bit where I've made a note about linking how a Chaos God basically has total control over people that they own the souls of. So Plague Marines carry Nurgle's gifts, yeah? And when Nurgle's connection to them was severed, when the warp was severed, their minds came back to them and they realized that, the Plague Marines, these bloated, pustuous, disease-ridden people, were left no longer feeling like it was a gift. They were in all of the pain, feeling all of the diseases, realizing what they'd become and how far they'd fallen. And it sort of was like too much for their mind. It always makes me think of, like, I don't know if you've ever watched Doctor Who, but there's the Cybermen episode in, I believe, season 2, where the inhibitor chips are disabled and they realize what they've become, and they basically have their brains just break. Like, they can't deal with what they've become. And it's very similar to that. When you are worshipping Nurgle and you are under his corruption, you very much believe you are carrying gifts. But obviously when you no longer have that magic influencing you, you realize that in fact you aren't as great as you were. Because it's a good example of the link between a Chaos God and their minions that they control. And I think the parallel there would be the way that Other Mother controls Other Father, right? Like, it's the sort of, she very clearly has more control over him than you see on the surface, which is very similar to Chaos Gods, because on the surface you'd think, sure, they're one of his demons, they are part of what he represents. But then stories like that one with the Chaos Marines really clearly make it obvious that their control isn't surface level. it changes their mind fundamentally. They are made to believe that whatever their chaos god wants is truly the best thing for everyone type thing. Not in all situations, but in a lot of situations.
Spawn catches up to Coraline, asking what she's doing, and when she tells him she's escaping, we find out that it's possible to go out of bounds in the other universe. Spawn reveals that Other Mother only made what she knew would impress Coraline. When Coraline asks why Other Mother wants her, Spawn tells her
She wants something to love, I think. Something that isn't her. Or maybe she just loves something to eat.
Shortly after that, they end up right back at the other Pink Palace, further proving Spawn's point about this universe only being made as far as it will impress Coraline. Similar to Other Mother, Tzeentch loves his subjects, but it's not genuine love you would expect from a friend or a family member. It's more like how you love having a pencil or you love having a door on your house. It's like a material love. Other Mother only loves Coraline in the sense she would love to have her soul, and when Coraline disobeys, she is thrown into a stone room where we meet the 3 spirit children mentioned earlier. Fast forward a bit, and Coraline escapes to the main universe and announces her return, only to find silence and a bag full of rotten groceries too. We then hear the doorbell ring to be greeted by none other than Wybie. Regardless, his grandmother is really mad about the Coraline doll, specifically because it was her sister's doll. Coraline accuses Wybie of stealing the doll, and he doesn't really confirm or deny that he did steal it, but deflects and said it looked like Coraline. Coraline interrupts him midway through his defense to tell him,
You used to look like this pioneer girl, then Huck Finn Jr., then it was this little rascals chick with all these ribbons and braids and Grandma's missing sister.
After running Wybie out of the house due to her apparently insane ramblings about the other universe, Coraline finds the Jones family car, only to find nobody in the car, with only Melinda's phone remaining. Coraline attempts to call Charlie, only to be left with a missed call message from her father. Clearly there's something very wrong. An angry god whose initial plan didn't work out, but has a backup plan that involves more drastic measures. This isn't too far out of possibility for something Tzeentch would do if one of his plans ever failed. Keep in mind, Tzeentch has schemes on top of schemes on top of schemes. He has backup plan on backup plan. After a while, Coraline decides to visit the main duo for some advice on her missing parents, who place a bowl full of candy from 1921 down on the table next to Coraline. When Coraline asks how it's supposed to help, that's when Main April stabs the candy repeatedly until it's nothing but dust, before being blown away by Main Miriam. And Main April plucks out a gemstone triangle with a hole in the middle. Regardless of if it's meant to find or lost bad things, it is intended to find things regardless, so Coraline walks away with the triangle in hand, as the main duo argue over what it is meant to find. This weird stone is interesting. It assists the wielder in combating the demonic powers. The Imperium has tons of relics with similar or even identical purposes, and many of them are employed by the Grey Knights, Custodies, and the Sisters of Silence. One thing I do want to point out is that Other Wybie kind of sort of resembles a Sister of Silence in the sense that he doesn't speak. While his vow of silence is involuntary, the Sisters of Silence, their whole gimmick is they work closely with the Custodians, and they're essentially mute personnel who take a vow of silence for life, and their way of communication is by sign language, and occasionally they'll use facial expressions. They're oftentimes used to combat forces of chaos because something about personnel who don't speak are harder to corrupt.
So the Sisters of Silence are an ancient all-female order of psychic blanks or blanks, which means they have no presence in the warp and are effectively soulless. They are like a subdivision of the Adeptus Custodes. So like, to link that back to what you were saying about YB, in theory, a blank wouldn't have a second version of themselves in the warp. They wouldn't have a soul representation or a chaos representation of themselves because that isn't how it works in Warhammer either. Like, I'm struggling to link this one for you.
I did watch a video the other day about why other species don't have as many chaos forces as humanity does. And the way it was kind of explained is that humanity already has very weak souls, but their souls are strong enough where certain numbers of humanity can still become influenced by chaos, and that what humanity calls blanks are just individuals with really weak souls. Like, they still have a soul. Every living creature in the main Warhammer universe, like in the material realm, has a soul to some extent.
My Warhammer knowledge isn't all-knowing, but I know they are literally referred to as the soulless.
That might just be a thing. Their souls are so weak that they're just considered soulless, because the
well, it's also that thing of like the Warhammer lore is like 50, 60 years old and has been redone a million times. So it could be that I'm using knowledge from a different version of the game, or, you know, I've heard it here, but in another place it's slightly different. And the Warhammer lore can get messy in places.
Because the point of the video I watched was that the Tau, the reason they have virtually zero people that convert to chaos is because their souls are so weak. They're essentially weaker or slightly on par with psychic blanks from humanity. So chaos physically cannot control them to any extent. Later in the movie, when Coraline is looking for the eye eyes of the 3 spirit children in order to win her freedom, we see the garden come to life and begin to attack her. On top of this, Other Father also begins attacking her, but he retains a small amount of free will. Enough free will, in fact, that he hands her the first missing eye she's looking for right as he begins getting sucked into the pond within the garden. Once the eye is in Coraline's possession, the entire garden turns to stone. Coraline moves to face the other duo. The dogs there have warped into bats with dog heads. When Coraline goes to grab the second missing eye, the other duo spring from their candy wrapper chamber and attack her, revealing that now the duo have been twisted into a 2-headed, gummy creature on a single body. Fortunately, Coraline doesn't have to spend much time there before she obtains the second missing eye. Before we meet Other Babinski again, the camera pans to the moon, greenish in color and a shadow of a button looming over it. Coraline doesn't have much time left. We also see Other Wybie's clothes hanging on the flagpole right above Other Babinski's door, confirming his death. There's a lot to unpack here. So the garden clearly resembles a realm of Tzeentch, so I doubt I have to explain that one. What I do need to point out, however, is the other duo morphing into one entity. This is 100% in line with something Tzeentch would do, for he is the god of change. There are several units under Tzeentch who have 2 heads and often utilize lesser forces, often in the form of flying lethal creatures. Kairos Fate Weaver, what once was just a somewhat normal magical bird demon, being one of them. I know that sounds insane, so let me explain. Within the realm of chaos lies the Well of Eternity, which is an anomalous well that nobody knows anything about, not even the Chaos Gods. Tzeentch oftentimes will throw his subjects into the well to study it and see what happens. Typically, nobody ever survives or returns in any way, shape, or form. However, one day Tzeentch decided to throw Kairos into the well, and he came back with 2 heads significantly larger and with severely enhanced magical abilities.
Kairos is a really interesting character within Warhammer lore. His 2 heads aren't just aesthetic. There are a lot of mutations within like Tzeentch's faction, I'll call it, that are largely, you get a big tentacle. But Kairos mutated in a really unique way where one of his heads is perpetually seeing into the future and one is always seeing into the past, which puts him in this strange position of always knowing what will be and what was, but he is blind to the present. It makes him an interesting greater demon of Tzeentch because of that difference in abilities, and in a lot of ways he's one of the few characters that knows more about the future than even Tzeentch does. There's also a key parallel in what you've said. The moment a soul is fully claimed by a Chaos God, its free will is just an illusion from that point. They might have other moments of lucidity, like Other Father desperately trying to help Coraline, but the god's influence is always the main factor in their mind. The piano literally silencing him is such a potent visual for that. He's not a person anymore, he's a puppet, and his strings are being pulled by a malevolent force that despises his momentary rebellion, and I'm sure it would lead to some sort of punishment had the movie not gone how it does.
One thing I'd also like to add is that during the scene in the garden where Other Father throws the eye to Coraline, there's also another similarity to how chaos influences its slaves or its soldiers, whatever you want to call them. One thing that tends to happen when someone who's a slave to chaos is on the verge of death, when they're like about to die, they'll suddenly gain some kind of lucidity for a brief moment on rare occasions where they realize what they've become and what they've been doing, and they try to do what they can before it's too late. And it's a very rare occurrence that happens, but there are a few examples of it happening in Warhammer. Alright, I'm gonna call it for this one. This video kind of dragged on longer than I wanted it to, and if I keep going, I'm just gonna end up repeating a lot of the same points again and again. So with that, I say thank you to everyone who watched this video. If you liked it, please leave a thumbs up and let me know down in the comments if I got anything wrong. Also, tell me what you thought of the video and where I need to improve. This kind of video is a first time for me, so I want to make corrections for future videos, should I've gotten anything wrong. Please give a big thank you to Raven SPCR for helping me with the recording, and give a big thank you to Alexander Amethyst for gathering the information from the movie. Without either of them, this video probably wouldn't have been made. Good night, I love you all.
Thank you for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.